Blog Talk Radio.
And I am that man in the box. Hello and welcome to Because Name Made Me. And in this particular instance, first of all, I am your host, your old pal Wheezy, and your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And specifically tonight, we are watching and reviewing the movie Ink because Robert Winfree made me. And here's your guest host for the evening, the one and only host of the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, host of Damn You Hollywood. He's a pretty cool prude. He really knows where his towel's at. Mr. Good to his mother, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I'm not entirely sure I can live up to the lofty expectations you've just laid out before our listenership.
The more things change. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I've been worse. But I've also had food poisoning and worked at Kmart, so there's a sliding scale. Indeed.
It's good to see that you're up to your old tricks and you've got that spirit that we've come to know and love. Yeesh. Anywho, so I put the invitation out there, and of course that's the whole gimmick to this podcast. I say to people far and wide, you pick the movie and I'll watch it and we'll talk about it, and I can't object. And you chose a 2009 science fiction fantasy film, an independent, as it were, Ink. So what's it all about, sir? I'm going to hand you the reins. I'm going to let you talk about it.
Well, first of all, I want to make this completely clear. You probably know this, but to everyone who might be listening, and God bless both of you, I view this as an opportunity to be punitive. Mark mentioned it. He and I do a movie review show called Damn You Hollywood. And please bear in mind, following complaints, I knew full well what I was getting into when I agreed to do that show. When Mark and I started ramping that up from, an every now and then show to, let's really... especially for certain seasons and for major releases, and we're going to do movies, and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to we'll do that show. I knew I would have very little say over the schedule. I knew that going in. I knew the type of movies we would be reviewing. Again, major releases, which plays into the title of that show because seriously. So this is not Mark didn't do anything unfair, and this isn't woe is me. But I've watched a lot of crap because of that show. A lot. And when Mark threw this out, I sat down and I made a list. It's a relatively long list, actually. And my goal with the movies I choose are to find movies that I enjoy and hopefully that Mark doesn't. Not universally, but hopefully. And the reason I started with Ink is because it would help me kind of get a gauge. The first couple of appearances I make on this show are going to be barometers. They're going to be range finding. I'm just trying to get a feel for Mark's preferences and what he likes and doesn't like. Because as much grief as I give him about, loving stupid action movies, that also means I can't just pick stupid action movies because I'm the only one who will suffer. But, and also as much grief as I give him about that, I'm well aware that Mark is an intelligent, well-read man who can enjoy more high-minded stuff that isn't just, ooh, look, explosions and slow-mo. So I'm trying to get a feel for where exactly that sweet spot is for, boy, I really like this, and Mark's just sitting there watching going, God, shoot me now.
Okay.
Because that was me during at least 2 movies we reviewed last year.
Ooh, one of them was Ghostbusters. It had to be.
Yes, it was. I have never had to physically resist the urge to walk out of a theater more.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the audience that I liked it. Anywho.
Yeah, I know.
Let's get down to brass tacks. And apologies to those of you who really enjoy our long-winded 2.5-hour marathon shows. This is not going to be one of them. I got shit to do tonight. And in the interest of fairness, and I'm going to turn it back over to Rob in just a second, but I want to put this out there now. If I'm told, and it really has, there's no show unless I do this. If I'm told you have to watch this movie and talk about it, I will watch the movie. I will do so with an open mind and an open heart, and it'll have my interest. And God knows I tried with this movie. As I said to Robert Winfree, this just happened to be one of those weeks where time got away from me, and I had to squeeze watching this movie in between last night's Metal Hammer of Doom, which went on forever, and sleep. Getting up the next morning for work. And I get up at like 5:45, 6 o'clock in the morning usually. So at about 11:30-ish last night, I sat down to watch Ink in earnest. And I'm not going to lie. I can talk about certain elements of this movie. I can definitely share some thoughts. We can put together a halfway decent review. But in the interest of full disclosure, I fell asleep through most of it. And I don't mean like I watched half and then I missed the second half. I mean, I watched like 5-10 minutes, would fall asleep for 5 minutes, wake up, rinse, repeat through the whole movie. So, thank God for Wikipedia, because otherwise I would have no idea what this movie's about. But I can tell you what it looks like, and I can speak to the performances I actually saw. So with that said, what is this movie about, Robert?
All right. Well, Ink is, as you mentioned, it's a sci-fi fantasy film released in 2009. I stumbled across it on Netflix because it was up for quite some time, and anytime I'd hop over into either of those genres when I was just scrolling, because it sorts by, our best guess for what you'll like, and God bless Netflix's algorithm for being wrong so much. But it was always at the top of my queue, and it was always at the top of that list. And it has a very interesting poster, and for people of the age that Mark and I are, we remember going to movie stores, rental stores, and the only thing you have to go by sometimes is the box art. So I was intrigued by that. Then a friend of mine whose perspectives I have cited on various podcasts I've been on, he actually works in, I believe he still works in the film industry out in Los Angeles, Tom, a good friend of mine, mentioned that he really, really enjoyed it, so I watched it, and I really enjoy this movie. This is one of the... There are things about it I do... It's not perfect, mind you, but there are things about it, I wish maybe were tweaked a little, but this was one of the movies that reminded me, when I first saw it several years ago. It was around 10 or 11, I think was when I first saw it. That there are movies beyond the slot buckets that Hollywood throws into our trough. Part of the reason I picked this one in this instance was because I know you're rather married to the traditional narrative structure, and this one kind of monkeys with it. And so I was hoping that that might be a little bit off-putting. But, you know, life being what it is and interfering with things, I completely understand that, you know, you have physical limitations.
I'm no longer on drugs. Well, at least not the kind of drugs that keep me up that night.
And, you know, we're all grateful that you've become more sober. All right, so our movie here primarily follows two seemingly loosely connected storylines. On the one hand, in the real world, the physical world, we primarily follow the character of John Sullivan. He is a high-powered financial type. I believe he's a stockbroker working on an IPO as we kind of follow him to begin with. And we kind of follow him as a few things happen in realms that we as humans are not necessarily privy to. We exist in the world of the story. There's a slightly different plane of existence populated by three types of beings. Storytellers, who are responsible for giving people good dreams, feeding on positivity, reinforcing us to be the best versions of ourselves possible. Incubi, which provide nightmares and reinforce negativity, negative emotions, get us to be the worst versions of ourselves possible. And drifters, which don't really care about the conflict between storytellers and incubi. They're just kind of out for themselves. They're a little bit lost. They're a little bit crazy, a few of them. And this is sort of a pseudo-representation of heaven, hell, and purgatory, respectively, as the destination for the human soul. The story that we follow in that world is a little girl who actually is John's daughter, is kidnapped by a drifter by the name of Ink, and that's the title of the film. He plans to offer her to the collective of the incubi so that he can become one of them and stop feeling things. The incubi are interesting-looking creatures, but they are individually, we're led to believe, somewhat devoid of emotion. They're really good at faking it. In fact, part of their visual is them faking various emotions. And he is fed up with feeling things, with his lot in life. He wants it to be different, and he's prepared to offer the soul of said small child to them in exchange for being relieved of parts of what used to be his humanity. There's a group of storytellers that are naturally trying to prevent this, including one of the chief storytellers, who winds up also being captured by Ink, and there's some fun exchanges between her and the child. Anyway, John is informed of his daughter's falling ill because Ink steals her soul. So I believe their explanation in our world is she has a seizure and falls into a coma. And turns out he does not have custody of his daughter. After his wife died, he fell into pills and alcohol as a method of coping. Custody was removed. He's still very bitter about all of this. Refuses to go see her in the hospital, in large part because it conflicts with the timing of an IPO he's trying to wrangle, which will essentially make or break the firm he is in charge of. And the storytellers, again, they're trying to rescue the little girl. They get the help of probably my favorite character in this movie, a blind fellow who's a pathfinder, someone who exists on their plane but can actually influence things in ours, who is, again, he's probably my favorite character because he's funny, and he has one of the better lines from the movie, which I'm not sure you may have slept through, and I don't mean that facetiously.
Oh, no, it's likely.
No, yeah, it's a line that gets repeated around my house a few times or between people who have seen the movie. God may have taken my sight, but I can still hear the beat of the world.
Good one.
Yeah, especially since the poor guy spends the film with electrical tape making big X's over his eyes. Because, he's blind.
Yeah, he had an interesting look, that character.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting visuals in the movie, and especially considering the budget was only $250,000. It looks darn good. Anyway, Ink finally is able to get to the fortress of the incubi to complete this transaction. At the same time, there's an event, and again, elements of this are chopped up narratively throughout the movie. But one of the big events, the big thing that changes, that occurs, is the Pathfinder or the storytellers trying to alter what John is doing so that he will actually go see his daughter in the hospital. They have been told this will lead to, this is an integral part of fixing the problem. So through basically a Rube Goldberg machine, a long series of interchaining events, he winds up being involved in a car accident and taken to the hospital where his daughter is. And when he realizes that's where he is, he decides to go see her, as the storytellers try to fight off the incubi who are trying to get back at him and persuade him away from this course of action. In the pivotal point in the other world comes as they're about to sacrifice said small child, and the chief storyteller is able to kind of reach through the haze of Ink's existence and remind him who he used to be. And he actually used to be the character we're following in the real world, that being John, the character of John. And what happened to him in a slightly different timeline, again, causality is not really a thing in most fantasy stories, this being one of them. Rather than being involved in that car accident that has diverted John to that hospital, he doesn't go to see his daughter as she dies. He instead closes this, the big business deal. His daughter passes, and he spirals into eventual suicide because he now has nothing left to live for. As he transitioned into the other world, he lost parts of his memory and actually became Ink. He recognizes, now remembering who he used to be, he fights off the incubus in their own cathedral, saves his daughter as the contemporary John reaches her side in the hospital, causing enough of a shift in the timeline to allow her to be returned to her body rather than actually dying, and kind of close film. This is a movie that I can talk about like that, but it really doesn't convey the parts of the movie that work so well. This is a very, in some cases, surprisingly emotionally driven story. And that's kind of the the twist about John actually being Ink coming out of left field at the very end leads to a very, for everyone I know who's watched it, there's a decent amount of emotion that comes out of that final scene, especially because it's intercut with the scene that occurred previously where John was just playing with his daughter, rescuing her from imaginary, in that particular instance, bad guys. And that's again, so if you haven't seen it, and again, this was a limited release movie, it streams on Amazon. I would highly just encourage you to find it. It's absolutely worth the time you're going to spend watching it. So anyway, that's my spiel. So Mark, from what you did see, what would you like to discuss?
Well, just reading the plot synopsis on Wikipedia and hearing you talk about it, I actually really like the plot of this thing. I like the message that it sends, because it really, the movie, based on what you're talking about, is about this guy realizing what's important in life, and really, and what is important is family, his daughter, and that's certainly something that I can sympathize and empathize with. I think the more surreal fantasy parts of this movie were a little harder for me to grasp, especially in my sedated state. But the parts that were real life, him playing with the daughter in the beginning, and him saying things like, "Can't you get your mother to do it? I'm not good at this sort of thing." And yeah, I mean, look, I play with my kids all the time, but boy, have I been there at times where I'm just like, oh, the last thing I want to do is play whatever crazy game you just came up with. But you got to do it. So I like that. I like the interplay between the daughter and the father. I like the idea that he threw it all away and became this other entity, and he has to sort of find his way back to himself. So all of those things worked for me. From a visual standpoint, talk about making something out of nothing. $250,000 budget. That rents you some cameras, maybe get you some sandwiches and catering.
It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing when it comes to making a movie.
Like an editing machine and some boom mics. That's it. That's all you got. And they really, you think about movies like The Matrix and, some of these movies out there that have these fantastic fantasy worlds that they use billions of dollars, in CGI and these are ginormous sets, and they were able to create a very interesting, visually stimulating other world, just monkeying with the camera a bit and using some filters. And I enjoyed that. I don't think you have to go crazy with films all the time, and everything has to be, this densely layered, visually overstimulating set piece. Sometimes, just a little green filter here and playing around with the edges of the frame there, and you get it. You get that this is another world. The look of the film I thought was really interesting, really fascinating. So I would say in general, I like the movie. I think this is one that I have to watch during the day. Even if I hadn't necessarily been tired, it's not a movie that you can just sort of have on in the background and it's just sort of background noise while you're on Facebook. This movie really does beg you to pay attention to it. And if you don't, you're not going to get what's happening. So, yeah, thank God for Robert Winfree and Wikipedia, or I would have been completely lost. But,
I will say that one of my, and these are minor, mind you, when I say I complain about this movie a little bit, I don't feel they do the best job of explaining the other worlds in real time. This is a movie that you almost have to see twice. Mm-hmm. Once just to experience it, and then once, oh, wait, I kind of get what's going on now. I wish to watch it. Now I want to see it again, almost like, Memento is kind of like that. Well, for a vastly different reason.
It's not one where I read the plot first, so I almost wish I had. Like, I remember the first time I watched There Will Be Blood, and not that it's a hard movie to follow, but, Paul Thomas Anderson, boy, does he like to take his time in a scene. And I don't mean like a Quentin Tarantino, take your time talking for half an hour before anything happens. I mean, like, these scenes were like almost single shot, and they were going on forever. And, certain things were happening in the movie, and I had to kind of read along the Wikipedia plot to keep up with things. Like, oh, okay, I get what's happening here. But that's not a thing I like to do in general. I kind of like to want to watch a movie, take it in, digest it, and then if I need to go back and say, oh, that's what I didn't understand happened here. So now that I've had the opportunity to sit through some of it, and we're hashing it out on this podcast, I can definitely see myself when I'm awake and can focus on it, sitting through it again. I'll probably watch it a few times. I think it's good enough that it warrants that.
Yeah, I have. It's not one I watch religiously, but I've seen it 3, maybe 4 times. Every 18 months or so, I wind up rewatching it just because I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. I like the guy who plays the dad. I think he puts in a good performance. The kid, we've often talked about on Damn You Hollywood, one way to ensure your movie has a quick death is to put a child actor in there. But, she was fine. I don't remember her doing anything. She wasn't yelling at the camera. I don't think anything she did was off-putting. There was not a single recognizable
surprisingly
actor
acceptable child actor as far as that goes.
Yeah. Yep, you're just fine, gal. I don't remember there being and maybe you would know this better than I would. There's not a single recognizable actor in this. I have no idea who any of these people are.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't think any of them have done really anything else.
Do you know where they got the actors from? I mean, are these like the producer's friend or something, or just actors that haven't gone on to do anything else?
I think they're just actors.
Okay.
That just small. I hate to say small-time actors because I don't mean that as a pejorative, but they're just more unknown style of actors who got cast for this.
Do you know anything about the person who put this together? It was written and directed by Jamin Winans. And you know anything about him?
Not a whole lot. I've seen a few of his. There was something else of his that I've seen, I think, and I can't remember what it is. I keep meaning to watch The Frame. I didn't know that was his, though. Oh, apparently it's actually intended to be a follow-up. Okay, I will now be watching that. It's on Amazon. That's what I'm going to do as soon as we're done here.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss with regard to this film?
Just again to mention that if you haven't seen it, again, it streams on Amazon. It was streaming on Netflix for a while. I don't know if it's planned to be rotated back into that particular role or not, but I just think I encourage people to watch it. This is one of those smaller films that the people I know who have seen it have very much enjoyed it, but I just don't have the opportunity or the platform to really kind of mention to everyone, hey, by the way, guys, this is really good.
Well, then I'm glad we have it.
There's a couple of things that I really liked that I don't think I really like the visual design of the incubi because they're unsettling, but in a very how do I say this? It's much more of a subtle kind of unsettling, the way that they look with their aprons and gloves and the screens in front of their faces that are kind of designed to mimic human emotion rather than anything they actually experience personally. And I actually like most of the fight choreography that went into it. There's elements of the direction as far as that goes that I don't care as much for because I maintain that most shaky cam is a poor attempt to compensate for failed choreography. If we shake the camera enough, they won't actually pay attention to what's going on. No, because they're all going to be vomiting. So shaky cam's a pet peeve of mine for those of you who don't know. It has its uses, to be sure, but I find it seriously overused. But I actually do like a lot of the fight sequences that they put in. So again, just if you haven't seen it, if you have, it's only like 90 minutes. I think it's worth the time to sit down and watch. There's some fun stuff in it. The whole sequence where they set up the car accident that completely diverts the timeline, I get a huge kick out of. And the blind guy I tend to like. He reads a little bit uneven at first as far as his character goes. I mean, the first thing that he does when you see him is he trips over a stick and goes, "Oh, hello, dirt, old friend."
Every time I looked at him, I kept thinking he was Arrow.
I can see that.
Kept waiting for him to just yell out, "You have failed this city."
Well, he reads a little bit uneven because he will occasionally just like snap and yell at one of the storytellers who he has kind of that friendly antagonistic relationship with. And I only recently kind of realized why he does that. Because again, he's blind, but he still hears, again, as he describes it, the beat of the world around him. It's how he navigates. It's how he interacts with the world. So it occurs to me that having someone constantly asking you questions and talking to you while your primary means of interacting with the world around you is through sound would get really aggravating really quickly, and you would snap and just yell, "Shut up!"
Hey, speaking of snapping and yelling, "Shut up," I got breaking news.
All right.
Transformers spinoff Bumblebee will be helmed by Kubo and the Two Strings director, Travis Knight.
Ugh. I am so not sure how to feel about this.
Conflicted. You are conflicted.
Yes, because I freaking loved Kubo. Tremendous movie. But I don't think there's a story to be told featuring just Bumblebee that, Okay, hopefully, and this is asking a lot of the Transformers franchise, mind you, but hopefully after the next movie there will be a degree of narrative cohesion to be had. I know that's asking a lot.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Narrative cohesion is not something Transformers has. Not just, and bear in mind, that's most egregious in the case of the current film franchise, but it is most certainly not necessarily limited to it.
All right, was there anything else about this movie that you liked, that you have a burning desire to talk about?
No, I think that's it. Just, again, to anyone out there, if you haven't seen it, find a copy. Again, it streams on Amazon Prime for free. Again, digitally is available on Amazon. It doesn't stream on Netflix, but they do have physical copies if you want to add it into your queue that way. Just, again, I think it's a really, really lovely little film that needs to, that more people should probably see. Other than that, no, that's it. And I will have to wait to get your full thoughts on it offline later at some point.
Yes, I will make this up to you, I promise. And I will make this up to the rest of you. I know normally we will at least do a full hour, but we are kind of doing an aborted show tonight, which I apologize for. Like I said, part of it's just I'm a little unprepared, and part of it is I'm going to see Logan. So I got shit to do here. I got surgery tomorrow. I got to make sure I see the movie before I go under the knife again. So with that said, just a couple of quick plugs. Robert and I are back doing the Damn You Hollywood thing for the month of March. We start back with Logan, which is a part of our big Wolverine Week extravaganza. We've got an announcement and panel discussion of the Wolverine character that'll be up on the network tomorrow. Source material, we'll be discussing Old Man Logan. Robert and I will be reviewing Logan, Metal Hammer of Doom reviews Entombed Wolverine Blues, and then On Trial, X-Men Origins Wolverine. I'm going to prosecute, and I'm prosecuting and Sean's defending. That was his choice.
Look, there's only two acceptable defenses for that movie. One is the chemistry between Wolverine and Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber is tremendous. That is absolutely the best part of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like two of the action sequences that don't suck. Other than that, that movie is hot garbage.
Yep, I got the easy job this time around. The rest of our Damn You Hollywoods for the month of March are Kong, Skull Island, Beauty and the Beast, and then finally Power Rangers. Then we are taking another bit of a break. We'll be back for The Fate of the Furious in April, and then finally we start the full summer season of Damn You Hollywood in earnest, as we will be in May, as we start with Guardians of the Galaxy, King Arthur, Alien Covenant, so on and so forth. Pirates of the Caribbean. So we've got 2-3 months there of hot summer movies. So put that on your calendar. The return of Damn You Hollywood coming soon. With that said, you want a quick throw a plug out there, or are you good to go?
This coming Saturday, we'll have live coverage of UFC 209 in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. For those of you who are fans of MMA, stop by, say hello. I appreciate it. And Sundays, I host the 411 Ground and Pound radio show. Starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this week, we'll be reviewing 209 and previewing Fight Night 106. Yeah, 106. Belfort versus Gastelum. Yeah.
Hot bananas.
Look, there has been one decent card on paper for the first, 3 months of 2017.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing for the
It's
UFC,
no one's fault, but January, they had 2 events that were meh. Rodriguez versus Penn kind of sucked. Shevchenko versus Pena. The main card was all right. I mean, you had a couple of good moments, but honestly, I had to look it up to remember that Jorge Masvidal stopped Donald Cerrone in that fight, which is huge because both those guys are awesome.
All I remember about that is Pat and I had a good time doing a live commentary for it.
But then Bermudez versus the Korean Zombie wasn't a very good card. Holm versus Durandame, one of the worst UFC pay-per-views ever. UFC 208.
Slept through most of that card. All right, man.
I wish I could have slept through that card. It was so bad.
All right. With that,
there's only one finish on that entire card. If Jacare had decided to play with his food, we could have had the first ever all-decision card, I think, in UFC history.
Oh, there has to be another one that was an all-decision card. I feel like there's been one in the past.
I mean, all-decision main card, yes, I'm sure, but I honestly don't think there has ever been a full, 10 or so fight card from start to finish that was all decisions.
I'm going to look for one now. All right. With that said, you heard all the plugs. We'll be back on Tuesday. Check out Wolverine Week. We got a lot of fun stuff planned, a lot of good podcasts, lots of great conversations. So we're all very excited. And that's it. All right. So thank you for tuning into our show tonight, abbreviated as it was. Be well, be safe, and behave.